Okay, so hi there, it's piebypie here. I have kind of been stalling hard on making this video because I have mad anxiety. Um, yep, that's a fun time. Anxiety's great. Anyway, really excited about Friday's reveal from Grinding Gear Games, revealing the trailer for Scourge League and all of the cool things that we can look forward to. And this video is going to be me going through some of the things that I like about it and what I'm looking forward to the most, but also I want to kind of make some observations or questions in regards to where this patch fits in the overall scheme of Path of Exile. So let's probably talk about Scourge first.
The Scourge.
New take on this. I was trying to explain how Scourge worked, and the reason that I keep fucking it up is because it is damn convoluted. What happens is you meet a bloke and he hands you this thing called a crucible. It goes into your gear and looks really bloody and cool. However, it collects all of the blood from the monsters that you kill to a certain point on a meter on the side of the screen, where after you reach that point, you can trigger a Scourge. The Scourge is a alternate reality or dimension. You stay in the map that you're in terms of tile set. However, the monsters that are there stay where they are and you shift into another version of the world where you are fighting Scourge demons. The Blood Crucible allows you to place an item there, and when you kill monsters during Scourge, you will be able to corrupt that item with a set of implicits. The dual implicit is a powerful benefit and a powerful trade-off thing that happens for that benefit. There are multiple tiers, so if you don't like the first roll that you got, you can charge it up again with more Scourge monster killing and have another go, and there are different tiers. So the highest tier for items is tier 3 and it has better stuff. It also works on uniques. Once you reach the Atlas, you'll find the Dream Furnace, which allows you to do the same thing with your maps. The highest tier for maps is tier 10, and I think it just is another way that you can juice your maps, and also possibly the way that you can access the further endgame element of Scourge, which may or may not include bosses. We're not really sure about that. Scourge demons drop currency items which allow you to re-roll corrupted stuff, particularly corrupted Scourged items. So you can resocket them, you can refuse them so that your sockets are linked, you can bless them, I think. No. Anyway, there's more coins that you can pick up on the ground. Exciting. The other things that the monsters may or may not drop at a certain rarity are items that have already been scourged, but in the explanation of this, Chris seemed to think that it would be better if you chose what item you could scourge rather than picking the thing off the ground, which is kind of a little commentary on what is good about picking up off the ground, and yeah, we're still waiting for that loot rework, aren't we? Scourge looks really fun. It looks very Path of Exile. It's, you know, the blood and the gore and the demons and cool reality phase shifting is great. Like, I definitely want to play it, and the trailer completely sold me on the playability of it. But the drawback I'm kind of sitting on right now is the fact that the Forge is a physical thing, and the items that go in there are items you cannot wear. So you'll need to have backups for your items that are being forged. I find this is kind of awkward to talk about because in the announcement, Chris was really excited about how this could be a substitute for leveling items. And I was like, man, if I find an item worth scourging, I'm probably still going to want to wear it rather than scourge it until I find a replacement for that item. And I don't know, how often do you find decent items in your leveling experience if you're not like, I don't know, the way that items drop, right? We're still kind of dealing with that. So that's where I'm unsure about it. But I also think that having the option of being able to put maps in there and roll the maps with their own implicits is an excellent substitute once you're in that late game and you don't really want to deal with the extra maintenance of, you know, crafting gear, because crafting your experience is, it seems less invasive to the overall gameplay and gear setups, and probably helpful for anyone in solo self-found. Yeah. So that's probably like the balance to this. The possibility of having boss interactions, not 100% confirmed, but likely based on hints dropped by Chris during the Ziggy D Q&A, is that the uniques for this league have all been revealed, and they are either from the core draw pool or from other league mechanics. So I'm curious what these bosses are going to offer us. Final note, actually, this has kind of been a sticking point with people talking about this, but people are like really concerned about the fact that the gear will drop wherever it is that you kill a Scourge monster, and then when you finish your interaction, you teleport back into where you started. So then you've got like this rest of the map, which still has all of its normal Rayclastian monsters that you need to kill. And then whatever items you found during Scourging are there too. And people seem to think this is a bad thing, but I feel like it's a massive improvement on a similar experience, which would be like Abyss to me. Because Abyss used to like send you on a wild goose chase, and then you would finish where the Abyss finished, and then you'd have to backtrack to find everything else. So honestly, I think it's an improvement from that, but we'll have to see how it shakes out. That's everything I have to say on Scourge straight away. Keen to play it, but a little concerned about, you know, timed-based mechanics. 3.16 is not just about Scourge. In fact, Scourge is probably going to take a backseat to the rest of the stuff that I talk about in this video. What I want to talk about next is actually huge pain in the ass. The passive skill tree has seen a massive overhaul. We've talked about massive overhauls before, and by we, I don't mean like on this YouTube channel, because I've never felt like I could talk about that stuff before, but I'm going to talk about this one. And the reason I think it's important is probably not the same reason why you guys might think it's important. It got a huge paint job. So it looks different in both the color, like the fact that it's blue now instead of brown is important. There is psychological studies that show that blue is a more calming color, and the passive skill tree has always been a source of anxiety for any new player who isn't like studied up on PoE, and probably like a lot of casuals and a lot of average players, to throw out some jargon that we seem to debate often. Anyway, the point being, not only is it blue and a relaxing color to look at, it has been redesigned so that all of the nodes and the clusters are spaced apart. They actually go out and say like it's spaced apart now. The shapes that are made by creating a passive skill tree that's been selected is visually pleasing, to say the least. And in addition to that, you have new animations for selecting an item, and new art, and we have these new things called masteries, which is what I'm pretty sure you guys are excited about. The masteries are, what I think is important about the masteries is the fact that they nest niche stats that would confuse new players. So this stat might have been on a cluster before, on a notable before, and considered a compulsory item that you needed to, in order for your build to function, which meant that your tree was going to be shaped a certain way so that you get to that cluster. The reason masteries have been introduced is so that people don't need to feel like pathing is a certain shape, because the mastery items are shared across any skill, any cluster with the same theme. The end result meaning that you don't need to go to every cluster if that cluster isn't relevant to you, if you're just going for that weird niche stat. That that's great for experienced players because you have like this amazing customizability, but you also have this like simplified version of the tree to look at that is so way more easy to engage with if you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, I feel like I, as a player, the dumb player, can actually go through and make my own tree up now. The dumb player who has never ever seen a build guide before and just wants to play through the game for the first time ever and pick skills is going to feel a bit more empowered by this change. All right. In addition to the ginormous change to how the skill tree looks, we also have some new keystones and some keystones added, taken away from ascendancies and added to the base tree, meaning that more classes in ascendancy have access to the same kind of skill. It was probably intended to create build diversity, but it might need to be rebalanced. We're not sure. I feel like some of the things that have changed has been that like core defensive stats that were associated with a particular ascendancy like Trickster or Raider are now accessible from everyone. And like, what does Trickster really feel like after that? What does Raider really feel like? Like, I'm not saying they're broken, they're not usable anymore, but the thing that made them, their core identity, you know, like just like go-to nodes that you had to choose, that might be like a miss or something that people might not gel with as much. But it also opens up opportunities for other players. So you know, like Ghost Shrouds are still really accessible in the position that they're in right now, for example. They are in the Shadow part of the tree. It seems like something Shadow should have. However, now Assassin has access to it, not just Trickster. So how does that look on Assassin? We'll be getting the JSON file later today, so we'll probably have some ideas of what our builds are going to look like pretty soon. Moving right along, I kind of grouped these things together, but we have a series of endgame reworks that we already knew were coming. These were actually spoiled for us in Chris's appearance on Bayclast in August. So we now have the Conqueror grind being cut in half. We have half the number of Watchstones, half the number of regions, and half the amount of grind, which is exciting and thrilling for anyone who was a bit sick of that, and we've been doing it the same way for the last 7 leagues. The second huge change is that the number of maps in the Atlas has been cut down to 100. It's way less intimidating, and as a sad side effect, we're saying goodbye to some of my favorite tile sets, probably some of your favorite tile sets, and also some community favorites like burial chambers. Sorry guys, hopefully you can find your headhunters elsewhere. We're also seeing an update to passives with having less citadels, meaning having a lot less of the passive variations, but also less repetition of these passives. Passives here having the meaning of the league content that you could specify as a result of doing the Maven related content. I overall am feeling way more ambitious about actually completing a Maven encounter after her being introduced in 3.13. I still have not fought her, and I would really like to, you know, fill out my Uncharted realms and maybe attempt some of those other crazy fights as a result. I think that these changes are really inspiring, but I also find the timing of them super interesting because these are like relatively significant changes to how the endgame works immediately preceding 3.17, and they got moved forward. And that's kind of odd to me. Like, what does next league look like if this is what, you know, if you're willing to mess with the endgame that much this league? And if it got moved forward, why not do it sooner and have more people enjoying the endgame grind? I mean, how much far forward could it have been moved? Anyway, revisit that in a minute. Immediately related to that is also new aspirational content, we have flawless breach stones, we have ravaged blight maps, we've got unrelenting timeless emblems, and we've also got simulacrum having an extra 10 waves and way more delirium orbs with a cut from Prophecy and Talisman League. We also have a giant rework of Delve is probably one of the things that people are most excited about. However, the English patch notes didn't include some notes about how ZHP builds would be affected by this, which is that you can't run Delve anymore, and I'm sorry about that. The Delve rebalance overall includes what I want to get into in next section, which I've kind of grouped a bunch of other things under as well, which is you're going to be able to enter the Delve at level 90 and slot in at around tier 13 maps rather than going back to your tier 1 map level of Delve, which means that you can put off your delving until you've finished other Atlas elements, which is a tremendous quality of life improvement in my opinion. With the addition of being able to find more fossils and more resonators through Delve, and resonators being cut in half by, you know, grouping all of those crafting items under one type of resonator, the same way that they're also doing with harvest crafting, is going to be a lot more engaging for players, although maybe some infinite rerolling might occur. Overall, Delve just looks really, really compelling if not including the oversight of not including the ZHP stuff. Everything else, I'm like, ooh, I'm real excited about that. I'm very excited about Breach and Blight and Legion and Sims, but the likelihood of myself actually being able to play them this league is like not that guaranteed. I would like to try and attempt it. It's going to be really difficult, but I don't see this content going anywhere anytime soon. So I don't feel too worried about that. Like, I think we'll be seeing this aspirational content in future leagues to come anyway. What I'm excited about is the fact that GGG had a deliberate approach to creating aspirational content, as opposed to letting it happen by accident, as we've experienced with previous iterations of aspirational content. So it's good to see them being deliberate and thinking about how these things can exist. And what I would encourage them to do is think about how they could interact with each other, if that's at all possible. I would love to see overlaps of leagues. We did it with Delirium and it was awesome. More of that, please. This is my favorite section though. So I grouped a lot of stuff under quality of life, and I mentioned a few just before, but I just kind of want to go through all of them. Huge change that I kind of dubbed stacks on stacks. Fragments, scarabs, incubators, kind of, and even currency stuff from league content, loot spiraling, is all dropping in stacks. After years and years of complaining about clicking too much in a game where we're expected to click a lot, GGG has finally heard us, and we might actually get, you know, some more empathy from them. It is crazy that this change is coming through. Maybe it indicates some changes that are being made to the back end, but I'm most interested in the fact that the items don't have to have the same amount of weight that they used to do for people to pick them up. There's probably one other stacking thing that could have happened and probably won't happen, and that would have been prophecies, and that's probably because we're not going to have prophecy next league. We've got unveiled modifiers, all tiers in one unveil. So good. Everybody's been bitching about that for years. It is likely that anyone in Solo Self-Found will have any craft that they need to get in relatively low amount of effort. They're huge. Moving on to Expedition going core. So Expedition is under this quality of life thing because the actual league itself isn't changing that much, but what we're getting as a result of it going core is auto pickup for the artifacts, and also the artifacts are no longer tradable. It feels like they have to implicitly tie auto pickup and tradable things, which is interesting. I'm wondering if we're going to see a trend of like auto pickups only available for non-tradable items or currencies. maybe that's going to be a trend in future leagues as well. If that should happen, probably the same way that Azerite works, and same with like, what's the one? Sulfite? Yeah, both of the delve currency type things. Uber Lab now only requires a single offering. You don't need to go through and complete all 6 trials, which you can't remember the names of and isn't specified and is annoying. Super excited about that. It just means that you only need to run trials when you want to get offerings. You can go into Uber Lab as soon as you're level 68, which seems, I don't know, some people are not happy about that because maybe they reach maps at 64, but whatever, grind a few maps. And how quickly are you gonna find that oh right, they did say that the first trials won't hit until yellow maps anyway, so you should be the right level for it, if I recall correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you will. However, I feel like I want to talk about quality of life in relation to GGG's main communication about these changes and how that's changed over time. So to say 316 was highly anticipated is an understatement for several reasons. For one, the PoE community has been particularly disillusioned by the current league, as it included some truly radical nerfs to player power. Defenses, the feeling of the player actually being able to play their favorite builds, like things just changed a lot recently. And they changed a lot because they retconned some of those changes and they retconned them again. All of these changes in 315 were done without offering particularly compelling alternative solutions, or any solution sometimes. And they were followed up by really hasty backtracking and a lot of appearances on podcasts to try and justify these decisions. The backlash was immense. Chris sort of took on this role. I mean, I applaud him for it as the managing director of GGG, for taking on this like very public, outward facing role to be the spokesperson. However, I found that a lot of his opinions when he was in the podcast seemed to be really against all the changes that I just talked about. You know, we've had this discussion about weight. We've had this discussion about like the RSI thing has been brought up so many times, for example. The fact that these things are all happening, they're all happening together and they're all happening now, might lead some people to think that, you know, GGG is trying to appease a very volatile player base who has just been royally pissed off by 315. I feel like that's an overly simplistic way of looking at this. I think that some of these changes need to happen in order to make way for future content. I definitely recall Rise saying that stuff that GGG have done has limited design space for them, and that's why they go ahead and do these giant nerfs, and they reshape the game so they have opportunities in the future to surprise us and wow us. The funny thing about it is just the fact that Chris really likes to represent his own vision of PoE, which seems to diverge quite a lot from the player base's ideal version of PoE. And the fact that like that vision, Chris vision, you've got Chris vision and player base vision, and then you've got overall patch notes as a representative of what GGG's done, that kind of all seem like competing versions of the game. So my question is just going to be like, why all of this now? Why all together? And you know, why 315 being such a staggeringly unbalanced version of the game? Why separate the balance into 2 different patches rather than taking a certain set of mechanics and then immediately balancing them as part of the rework? Anyway, I appreciate deeply what we're going to be experiencing in 316, and I'm super excited to play in it. I'm super compelled by the league announcement format changing because we've had a longer lead time to be excited about the game. We had a lot more material to work with in terms of multi-part development manifestos, surprise patch notes, and still more things to spoil as we have the following week before the new league drops. Yeah, I feel like we might be entering a new version of GGG. And I also want to take a moment to applaud them because they did this patch with work from home, and work from home lockdown has previously caused some serious workflow issues that had massive impacts on previous leagues. So for this league to look the way it does, to have the level of organization and project management see it come into fruition is a massive achievement for this company, and really, really excited to see what they're able to achieve once they've been able to hire people again and work on PoE 2. Anyway, I think that's everything I had to say about the updates. I'm sure that there's going to be some really fun content coming from everyone in regards to the JSON file dropping and being able to have access to the passive skill tree in its full, complete form. And I'll see you in the next video, hopefully.